Hello, this is Liz Striegel. I will be spending this presentation speaking to you about lessons learned in public management from the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center merger. Specifically, I will look at the first 6 months of 2002 after Paul Levy took over as CEO of Beth Israel Deaconess, which are featured in the multimedia case Paul Levy Taking Charge of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. In 1916, Beth Israel Hospital opened its 45-bed facility on Townsend Street in Roxbury amid a growing suburban Jewish population. The Jewish community built and financed Beth Israel over several decades, devoting millions of dollars to create a high-class academic medical center that was known not only for the quality of its research and teaching, but especially for its quality of care. Although Beth Israel conducted religious services according to the Jewish faith, and observed Jewish dietary laws, it pledged to offer medical and surgical aid and nursing to sick or disabled persons of any creed or nationality. The Beth Israel Hospital placed an emphasis on teaching and research. In 1928, the same year it entered into its relationship with Harvard Medical School, it also established a formal teaching affiliation with Tufts University. That year, the Medical Research Department was created, which pioneered important treatments for chronic health disease. Additional medical achievements included being the first hospital to publish a patient's Bill of Rights and to develop a hospital-based ambulatory care program. Beth Israel also first developed an intranasal insulin spray for the treatment of diabetes and provided the first evidence that irregularities in the visual system of the brain could help explain the problems of people with dyslexia. Further, cardiologists at Beth Israel developed the cardiac pacemaker and were among the first to conduct studies on the effectiveness of balloon angioplasty and other methods such as stent insertion to relieve obstructions of the coronary arteries. On February 5, 1896, in a converted 5-story brownstone at 691 Massachusetts Avenue, Deaconess Hospital opened its doors. The 14-bed infirmary was an outgrowth of the Methodist Deaconess movement, religious women dedicating themselves to the care of the sick and the poor, which had its origins in early 19th century Germany. Over time, the Deaconess acquired physicians who specialized in thoracic surgery, cardiac surgery, and cancer research. Although throughout its history the Deaconess focused on patient care over medical education, it did have a tradition of specialty training. During the 1960s, it expanded this teaching role and built an accredited residency program. That laid the foundation for a formal relationship with Harvard Medical School. Further, the Deaconess had a leading role in the early studies of the cause, course, and treatment of AIDS. Because of the Deaconess's long tradition in organ transplantation and immunological research, 2 Harvard Medical School professorships were established in transplantation. In 1996, the Beth Israel Hospital and the Deaconess Hospital merged to form Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, also known as Bidmc. The merger occurred because of 2 factors. First, both hospitals were experiencing financial troubles. They had gone from the cost-plus environment of traditional healthcare to the more competitive environment of managed care. Leaders of both hospitals were driven by their assumptions about synergies and economies of scale and saw a merger as an opportunity to be bigger and more financially successful. Second, before the Bidmc merger, Brigham and Women's Hospital and Massachusetts General Hospital merged to create a new organization called Partners Healthcare System. The leaders at Beth Israel Hospital decided they needed to merge with other hospitals to be a counterbalancing force in the market. They concluded that the Deaconess was the most logical partner to join with them. Although it was portrayed as a merger of equals, in fact it was not. Mitch Rabkin from Beth Israel ran the newly merged hospital, and therefore the Beth Israel chiefs and leadership were given positions of authority. Therefore, there was a lot of hostility, mistrust, and bad feelings between Beth Israel and Deaconess doctors. Also, the leaders at the new Bidmc focused on clinical integration. The merging of 2 different cultures met tremendous resistance, and the overall integration was poorly executed on the business side. Within 2 years, annual losses started going into the double digits, with losses of over $50 million in fiscal years 1998, 1999 2000, and 2001. In 2001, amidst continued financial losses and inner turmoil, Dr. James Reinertsen was asked to step down as CEO of Bidmc. Bob Meltzer stepped in as interim CEO, while the Bidmc board of directors looked for new leadership. Paul Levy, executive dean for administration at Harvard Medical School, was initially a member of the steering committee charged with finding a new CEO. As he sat in on committee meetings, he reviewed reports from the Hunter Group, a consulting firm that had been hired to evaluate Bidmc needs, and discovered that the issues and problems within Bidmc had virtually nothing to do with medicine and healthcare. Instead, they were management and business issues. He realized that he knew how to make decisions, knew how to motivate people, and knew how to analyze issues. Paul Levy quickly became the frontrunner for CEO. On January 4, 2002, the Boston Globe reported that Paul Levy was the choice to take over leadership at Bidmc. The Globe wrote that according to individuals who had worked with Levy, he would bring to the job many strengths, including skills as a negotiator and a willingness to delve into new challenges. Bob Meltzer, the interim CEO, said of Levy, "Not only was he the best candidate available, but we think he is a spectacular candidate. After 3 years at the medical school running the business side, he knows all the physician leaders at the hospital and has their trust. He is also savvy about the relationship between the hospitals and the medical school, and he has a passion for Beth Israel Deaconess." The multimedia case, Paul Levy, Taking Charge of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, describes the situation Levy inherited, his negotiations prior to taking the job, and his first 6 months as CEO. The case includes extensive video interviews with Levy, conducted every 2 to 4 weeks during his first 6 months, a detailed timeline and calendar of events, excerpts from Levy's daily schedule, email correspondence, internal reports and memoranda, and selected Boston Herald newspaper articles. This case presents users with a perspective of the gritty details of day-to-day general management and provides useful insights that a public or non-profit manager can learn from Levy's experience. The second half of this presentation will discuss the practical lessons learned regarding organizational leadership and management, and will identify the most useful insights that a public or non-profit manager can take away from Paul Levy's first 6 months as CEO of Bidmc. Key aspects of his management style that are noteworthy include his focus on transparency, his timing of personnel decisions, his desire to hold Bidmc managers accountable, and his emphasis on involving non-management staff in evaluating hospital changes. In early 2002, the Hunter Group released a report that concluded Bidmc lost an estimated $67 billion on operations in the fiscal year that ended September 30, 2001. The report predicted that loss would grow to $102 million in fiscal year 2002 without rapid and drastic changes by the hospital. Paul Levy took over as CEO just days before the report was released. During his first week, someone suggested to Levy that the staff might be interested in reviewing the Hunter report. He decided to post the report on the hospital's intranet and asked staff to respond with any questions or comments. He considered this an aha moment and saw it as an opportunity to make staff aware of the report's evaluation of Bidmc and to possibly motivate staff in future change efforts. Further, Levy hoped that his actions would establish him a reputation of honesty, openness, and responsiveness, which he had felt had been lacking in previous management. This level of transparency continued in Levy's first 6 months as CEO. He maintained contact with all staff via mass emails that were meant to update on the status of Bidmc. He also held hospital-wide forums that allowed for staff to question, discuss, and/or vent about current happenings at the hospital. Lessons learned from Levy's steps toward transparency include: a manager should be aware when entering a new managerial position and/or work environment that staff may be suspicious or wary of change. A manager should also be as transparent as possible. Being a transparent manager means sharing what your vision is for the organization's future, sharing relevant information pertaining to an organization, and sharing any problems or concerns regarding the organization and looking to staff for suggestions or solutions. If a staff is exposed to factors such as these, they are less likely to resist managerial actions meant to help. When Paul Levy became CEO, he did not make any immediate changes in Bidmc management. Despite suggestions that he should fire the chief operating officer, Levy states that it is bad practice to clean house right away. He did not want to be seen as a puppet being told who to fire and who to keep. Doing so would give too much power and influence to groups who should not be involved in personnel decisions. Instead, Levy chose to wait several months so he could learn the environment at Bidmc and have a chance to compare his leadership and management principles with those of his upper-level managers. Levy described the key aspects of his management style as support and empowerment. He valued providing his managers and staff with the resources they needed to do their job, and he trusted that the jobs would be done. It was quickly obvious that Levy's management style conflicted with his COO. Levy stated that her management style was more focused on direction and control. He found that after 4 months as CEO, they were unable to successfully work together, and he asked her to step down. It was not a matter of the COO being capable of her job. Levy simply made an executive decision that he, and thus the hospital, would be more productive with a COO whose style matched his own. Insights gathered from Levy's personnel decisions include: a manager should resist making personnel decisions until they have adapted to and feel comfortable within the work environment. The manager should also assess worker productivity and/or management style in relation to the work environment and make an individual decision. The clinical chiefs at Bidmc were hired into their jobs because of their academic credentials. Levy stated that they are among the best and the brightest in their field, as demonstrated not by clinical activity, but by their research. Therefore, they were not chosen for their administrative abilities or for their clinical abilities. Despite this, the key part of the business side of a hospital is the clinical side. It is the clinical side that generates money to keep the hospital running, which then permits teaching and research. Without a successful clinical side, the hospital will fail and the teaching and research opportunities will cease to exist. Levy observed very quickly that the clinical chiefs viewed themselves as heads of faculty, not as managers. They were content to allow their staff to set their own priorities with very little oversight. In response, Levy began introducing different levels of accountability within Bidmc. Each month, he was required to report to the board of directors on clinical volumes, meaning how many patients and what kind of patients had been seen, and provided a variance report comparing actuals to the budget. In the past, the CFO himself had tried to explain any variations between actuals and the budget. After Levy became CEO, he did not see this as a CFO responsibility. Levy did not believe he or his CFO should be crafting explanations for variance. Therefore, Levy instituted a new policy where clinical chiefs must provide written explanation of the reason for any variance. This was a way for Levy to hold his chiefs accountable for their department's decisions and actions. As observed in these emails, Levy's attempt at accountability were not initially embraced. Clinical chiefs were unresponsive and did not provide sufficient information as to why their department was underperforming. At the end of May, Paul Levy asked his vice president, Blake Barrington, to work with the clinical chiefs to develop specific individual and departmental performance goals for the next 18 months. Barrington asked the chiefs to propose goals focusing on quality, volume, productivity, cost, and leadership. A response from Chief Charles Stevenson sums up the continued attitude of the chiefs. His response to Barrington was a vague, immeasurable goal, the opposite of what Levy and Barrington were striving for. Although his intentions were good, Levy met significant resistance with changing the mindset of his clinical chiefs and opening them up to the idea of change. Insights gained from Levy's experience with his clinical chiefs include that to change behavior, small steps are necessary. Changes must be incremental and must have a result worthy of attention. Further, The failure to accept and comply with the incremental changes must be addressed and consequences must be established. In Levy's case, he ultimately terminated his chief of orthopedics. In an all-staff email, Levy stated that he was firmly convinced that active participation and, in fact, leadership by the Bidmc physicians in the recovery of the hospital was an absolute requirement for success. He boldly admitted that without the active participation and leadership by the physicians in the execution of the recovery plan, the hospital would fail. This approach by Levy embodied a participative management style. He committed to engage in more communication and sharing of decisions through teams, committees, task forces, general meetings, open-door policies, and one-to-one exchanges. Further, he did not include clinical chiefs on planning committees in an attempt to get input and analysis from the individuals working day-to-day in the medical departments. Although he assured the chiefs that they would have input before decisions were made, Levy was adamant that non-managerial staff be included. Inclusion is an important takeaway from Levy's actions. Employees are more likely to engage, provide essential input, and feel motivated to actually carry out change if they are involved in its development. Rather than just being told what to do, staff will understand why they are being asked to change their behavior. This is more likely to lead to a more effective and efficient organization. Paul Levy, looking back on his first 6 months as CEO, concluded that it went pretty well. He explained that Bidmc's financial results had been better than budgeted. The hospital had experienced 2 profitable months and had been cash flow positive for 5 months. Regarding his clinical chiefs, Levy remained optimistic. He admitted that thus far, he really had only acted as a cheerleader and that there was still plenty to accomplish with them. Although he had not yet met with them to establish performance review standards, he planned, in the coming months, to meet with them individually and set objectives for the next year. Paul Levy took charge of Bidmc immediately after being named CEO. He implemented a new management style and set high expectations for both administrative and medical staff. His first 6 months were successful, but ultimately were just the beginning of a multi-year overhaul of the Bidmc. This concludes my presentation on Paul Levy's first 6 months as CEO of Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at the address provided. Thank you for watching.